So here it is, Name of the Wind. And the question is, have you ever read a book that feels like it's teaching you something ancient? Like it knows something about you that you don't quite understand? Hey everyone, welcome back to Magus in the Media, where we explore the myth, the magic, and the meaning hidden in the stories that shape us. If you love diving into the deeper layers of fantasy, philosophy, and the imagination, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video. It really helps the channel grow and keeps these conversations alive. Now, enough of that. The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This isn't your typical fantasy novel. It's the story of Kvothe, a living legend who's disappeared into a quiet village, hiding behind a new name. Over the course of 3 days, he tells the story of his life, how he became a hero, and what it cost him to be remembered as one. The first book covers day 1, the second, The Wise Man's Fear, is day 2, and so on with the third day, which we don't quite have yet, and one day, hopefully, we will. The ending of his life's tale, as it's said, still has not been told. But here's what makes this story so powerful. It isn't just about magic, it's about how stories become magic. It's about brilliance, obsession, loss, and the way every legend starts with a single name spoken into the silence. And fittingly, the book begins with just that, the silence of 3 parts. It's a beautiful prologue. It's one of the most amazing prologue, if not the most amazing prologue I've ever actually read. It's one of those most beautiful openings in all of fantasy. Quiet, heavy, and full of a kind of mystery that pulls you in before you even know why. This book is about the cost of genius, about how language and music and story can both create a person and destroy them. And today, I want to talk about why The Name of the Wind isn't just one of my most favorite fantasy books, but one of the most important stories I've ever read. What The Name of the Wind does better than almost any book I've ever read is capture what it feels like to be young, to be brilliant, and completely out of your depths. Kvothe is that kind of kid who's way too clever for his own good. Someone who knows he's capable of greatness, actually, but keeps getting knocked down by life anyway. I love this story. I love this story. I love this story. I've actually read the story over and over and over and over, again and again, because it understands me. It understands you and everything in legend and story. And it understands that intelligence alone isn't quite enough. That you can be gifted, inspired, even extraordinary, and still have to learn patience, humility, and endurance. Rothfuss writes that struggle with so much honesty that you can almost feel every moment of hunger, pride, and awe right alongside Kvothe. And then there's the prose. I don't say this lightly. Rothfuss might be one of the best sentence-level writers in modern fantasy. Every line feels handcrafted. Every paragraph builds rhythm and meaning the way a musician builds a song. You can hear the cadence in his words. It's the kind of writing that makes you slow down, reread a line, and think, yeah, that's actually exactly how I feel. I've read this book and listened to it on audio more times than I can even count, and every time I come back to it, it gives me something new, some little insight about creativity, or ambition, or failure, or myth, or legend that I missed the first time. For me, it's become almost scriptural, one of those texts that you revisit because it changes with you. And maybe that's why it resonates with me so deeply, with what we're actually talking about every day on this channel, on Magus in the Media. It's about the making of a magician in the truest sense, someone who learns to shape reality through intention, will, and imagination. It's about how a person becomes a legend and what they lose along the way. What makes Name of the Wind so special is that it isn't told like most stories. It's not actually a straight line. It's a memory being spoken out loud, a legend trying to make sense of itself. The book opens in a small, quiet village called Nuare. Maybe that's not how you say it. That's how I've said it. Inside the Waystone Inn, there's an innkeeper named Kvothe. He's polite, he's humble, and he's actually quite ordinary, besides for his blazing red hair. But you can feel from the first few pages that something about him is actually quite off, that his stillness is the kind that comes after fire, not peace. Because Kvothe isn't just an innkeeper, he's actually Kvothe. The man from all the songs, the heroes of all the stories, the one who killed a king and spoke to gods and vanished from the world. But here, he's hiding. He's living in silence, trying to forget who he used to be. He has one companion, Bast, who helps him run the inn. Bast isn't human, he's Fae. And even though he looks young and mischievous, there's something old and wild in him. He calls Kvothe Reshi, which means teacher. And what's heartbreaking is how much he loves him. Bast remembers the legend, the man who could call the wind. And he can't understand why his teacher has buried himself in this small little life. Then one night, a man called the Chronicler wanders into town. He's heard rumors that Kvothe is still alive. And when he finally finds him, he asks for the truth. Not the myths, not the embellished songs, but the real story, if there is one. Kvothe agrees, but on one condition, that it be told properly. Across 3 days, he says, if I'm going to tell you the truth, I'll need 3 days to do it. And that's the structure of this entire series. Each book is 1 day of the storytelling between Kvothe and the Chronicler, with Bast silently listening. That frame, those quiet moments in the inn, they give this story its heartbeat. Every time we return to it, we're reminded that this isn't just a tale of magic and adventure. It's a confession. Kvothe isn't glorifying his life. He's trying to understand it. And Rothfuss sets this mood perfectly with the opening chapter, The Silence of Three Parts. It's one of the most beautiful openings I've ever read. It describes 3 kinds of silence. The silence of an empty inn, the silence of a man who's lost his purpose, and the silence of the waiting of the world. That deep, heavy quiet before a storm. And now that's paraphrased, right? I'm going to do that throughout this review, this telling of this great story. We're going to get paraphrases. We're going to get spoilers, so be alerted. And we're going to get a lot of missing parts as I go through this because the story is so vast and so wild, so wide open, so alive with breath that I'm going to have to do many videos on this. And this is going to be a staple for this whole channel because the Kingkiller Chronicles and The Name of the Wind into the next book, The Wise Man's Fear, has become something of a catalyst for my own journey or understanding the journey of the great adept and the magician through time. And that's what this book feels like. The entire story lives inside, again, what I was talking about, that silence. It's a pause between what was and what might still be. Because even as Kvothe tells his story, the world outside the inn is starting to unravel. Strange creatures, the Skrael, and even a skin dancer in the present-day chapters are slipping out of old nightmares. And you start to wonder if the world is breaking, because the one man who could have saved it chosen to stop being himself. And we must ask the question, is he the same man who then caused it? That's what makes this frame so powerful. It's not just a device, it's the soul of the book. It's about guilt, legacy, and the silence that follows after a name has been spoken too many times. It's about a man haunted by his own legend. The more you sit with it, the more you realize this isn't just Kvothe telling a story. It's Kvothe remembering how to be real again. Now as we move on, Kvothe starts the story the way a lot of great myths do, with a boy who doesn't realize he's already living inside of one. He's born into what they call the Edema Ruh, a troupe of traveling performers who live by art and story. His parents, Eloden and Lorien, are actors, musicians, and poets. They teach him that stories are how people remember who they are, and that music can reach parts of the soul that words alone cannot. Kvothe grows up surrounded by laughter, instruments, and movement, an entire world built out of creativity and connection. Then, this older arcanist named Abinthy, or Ben as Kvothe calls him, joins their troupe for a while, and everything changes for Kvothe. Ben isn't just a magician, he's a scholar from the university, and he sees something very rare in Kvothe. He sees someone whose mind already works like magic does. He starts teaching him the basics of sympathy, which in this world is a kind of like a mix of science, focus, and willpower, and fantasy magic, and actually occult magic, as in the ancient magic of magicians and adepts through the ages. Yet it's not about waving a wand, it's about understanding how the world fits together and learning to shift the balance through thought and intention. Ben teaches him that magic is really about discipline. This is something we've been talking about knowing the strength of your Alar, your ability to believe completely in 2 opposing truths at once. He shows him how to separate his thoughts, how to stay calm through the heart stone, how to divide his mind so he can hold focus and emotion in perfect tension. It's one of the first times in the book that Rothfuss starts tying magic to the human condition, because it's not power that makes you extraordinary, it's attention. And I will state how that is why, in this day and age, attention is what every great power is trying to gain from you. Kvothe is this brilliant, curious kid. He's a little too clever, a little too proud, and you love him for it because you can feel the fire within him. He wants to learn everything. He soaks up Ben's lessons like air, and for a while, life is perfect. He has a loving family, a mentor, and a dream to study at the university, and maybe even learn the name of the wind, the oldest magic there is, the art of naming. But that just doesn't last, as all stories have. One day, Ben leaves the troop, and not long after that, everything collapses. Kvothe's father has been working on a song, a ballad about the Chandrian, these shadowy, half-mythical figures said to appear whenever their names are spoken. No one really believes they're real until they show up. Out of nowhere, one evening, the Chandrian come. They kill everyone, his family, the entire troop. They burn everything in blue, leaving nothing behind but ash and silence. Kvothe is just a mere kid, and somehow he survives, hiding in the forest surrounded by the ruin of the only world he's ever known. And yes, they stare at him. He had a chance to die with his family, and it just didn't happen. This is a moment that defines the rest of his life and the rest of the series. It's the wound that never fully heals, the question that keeps him moving forward. Who are they, and why did they kill my family? And what's so powerful is that Rothfuss doesn't treat this as some quick origin story. He lets you sit in that grief. Kvothe spends years trying to make sense of what happened. He goes from a boy full of wonder to a ghost of himself, living off scraps in the city of Tarbean. But even in that brokenness, you can feel that the story hasn't left him. It's just waiting to wake up again. This whole early section of the book has so much heart. It's about art, family, curiosity, and then loss. You see the foundation of everything that makes Kvothe who he is. The music, the storytelling, the intellect, and the ache. It's where the legend really begins, even if he doesn't yet know it. After the fire, after the Chandrian take everything from him. One of the saddest scenes there's many sad scenes in this book, many sad scenes in this story. He only has one thing in that forest, his lute, and a string breaks. But what does a curious and brilliant child do but learns to play with one less string? And then the story continues to carry on. Kvothe walks out of the forest and into a completely different world. He ends up in Tarbean, the sprawling, filthy city where nobody cares who you are. It's the opposite of the life he had with the Edema Ruh. There's no music, no laughter, no kindness, just survival. He's a kid with nothing left. And Rothfuss really lets you feel that emptiness. Kvothe goes from this brilliant, talkative child to someone who barely speaks. He becomes invisible, sleeping under, anything he can find, stealing anything he can find to eat, and walking around holding on to this broken lute when he can. It's heartbreaking because you know how sharp his mind is, and yet he completely is forgotten by the world. What I love about these chapters is how they feel so real. It's not some heroic montage of struggle. It's slow. It's grim. It's very lonely. He's trying to remember who he was while every day in the city tries to erase that very memory of him. And that's what grief actually feels like. You don't heal right away. You just fade away for a while into everything else. But somewhere in that darkness, something starts to wake back up. One day, Kvothe hears a story being told about Taborlin the Great, the legendary namer who could call the wind and speak to stone. It's the same story his parents used to tell him, actually. And in that moment, he remembers what it felt like to believe again. It's small, but it's a spark that starts to bring him back again. That's the moment that changes everything. He decides he's going to find the university. What else does he have left? He's got nothing left, so you might as well go learn something. Go to the place that you once knew would be your solace, the place Ben told him about. And he's going to learn everything he can about the Chandrian and the Amir, the secret order that might be connected to them. It's the first time he turns grief into purpose. The Tarbean years are where he earns this resilience. They strip him down to nothing, so that when he finally reaches the university, you understand just how much it took to get there. It's the alchemical way. You must first dissolve that what you were to be able to build yourself up into that which you want to become. And he doesn't arrive to the university as some chosen one, the hero, the Anakin of the series. He crawls his way there, carrying loss like a second skin. And I think that's what makes The Name of the Wind hit so hard, actually. It doesn't skip over the suffering that builds a myth. It shows that before the legend, there was just a hungry kid trying to remember the sound of a song. When Kvothe finally makes it to the university, it feels like he's crossed a threshold. From the ashes of one life into the beginning of another. After everything he's survived, actually, he's finally standing in the one place he's dreamed of ever since he was a child. The heart of learning. The place where magic isn't mystery, it's method. And that's what makes the university so fascinating. It's not Hogwarts. It's not about wands or prophecies. It's about discipline, like I was saying. It's about discipline. It's about discipline and learning. Here, magic, called sympathy, is treated like physics. It's governed by laws of nature, ratios, balances of energy. You don't cast spells. You learn to focus your will so sharply, the world bends a little to meet it. Kvothe's intelligence shines here, but so does his pride. He's brilliant, yes, but he's also reckless and hungry for recognition. He is still just a teenager, very young. Most people actually think he's a lot older than he is, but he's not. He's a child. When he talks his way into the admissions interview, he's completely broken, but still half-starved from Tarbean, and somehow convinces a panel of professors to let him in. It's one of my favorite moments because it shows what kind of person he truly is. He's not chosen by destiny. He earns it through sheer willpower and wit. The university is a world of knowledge and rivalry. Each discipline has a master. And here we go. This is them. Elxadal, who teaches sympathy. Kilvin, the great artificer, who builds magical mechanisms called sympathy lamps, and the like. Many, many things of technology in that world. Arwel, the healer. Hem, who becomes one of Kvothe's loudest enemies. Lauren, the quiet keeper of the vast archives. And then there is Eloden, the master namer. The only person who actually truly understands the deeper, older art that most people at the university don't even believe in anymore. Kvothe's life here becomes a balancing act between brilliance and survival. He's constantly one step away from being expelled every single day, it seems like. He's broke and he's beaten. Tuition is his constant enemy, isn't it? All of ours, right? He works odd jobs and he plays music in taverns, and when that isn't enough, he goes to Devi, the Gaelet, a moneylender in Imre, a former student who's as sharp as she is dangerous, and I think that's why maybe I like her so much. Devi quickly becomes actually one of my favorite side characters. Is she a side character? She's a character nonetheless. She's ruthless, but strangely honorable, a mirror of what Kvothe could become if he let his cynicism take over. And even though all this hardship, there's a sense of wonder. Kvothe dives into his studies like someone who's found oxygen again. He learns about sympathy, alchemy, artificing, and eventually he will learn the art of naming. But we're not going to get there yet. That ancient power, the naming, that Ben once told him about. Naming isn't about control, it's about understanding. And when you truly know something's nature, when you can call it by its real name, you can ask it to listen. And again, I've skipped over some huge scenes with Ben and Kvothe and the naming, but I think you must just go and read and listen to the book yourself. That's the magic that actually runs beneath everything in this book. When you can call it by its real name, you can ask it to listen. And I think that is also, in our world, how magic really works. Not only the science and art of causing change and conformity to the will, but if you can truly find the name of things, the true name of things, you have power over it, and it listens to you. And this is something through everything we talk about will be on the very back end. Again, that's the magic that runs beneath everything in this book. It's not flashy, it's not loud, it's actually quiet. It's about attention, focus, and will. The same qualities that make any act of creation possible. But life at the university isn't just study and discovery. It's rivalry, pride, and pain. Kvothe's feud with this gentleman, who's just kind of a bastard. Actually, he's quite hated. I can't stand this guy. Ambrose Jackus, a spoiled noble who can't stand being outshined by a mere commoner like Kvothe, follows Kvothe everywhere. Ambrose uses money, politics, and cruelty to make Kvothe's life miserable, and eventually it explodes. After one particularly cruel act, actually, Kvothe loses his temper and calls the name of the wind, and nearly kills Ambrose. This is going to come back to haunt Kvothe. It's the first time we truly see what he's capable of, and that I'm talking about Kvothe, and how dangerous that power of naming can truly be. Through it all, Rothfuss makes you feel that the university isn't actually just a school. It's a crucible. Every lesson, every punishment, every failure is shaping Kvothe into something larger than himself. It's where he learns that knowledge has a price, and that sometimes the difference between genius and disaster is just one word spoken in the wrong breath. What I love the most about these chapters is that they make magic feel earned. It's not gifted, it's trained, it's practiced, it's fought for. It's about curiosity, patience, and the willingness to look foolish in the pursuit of truth. The university becomes a reflection of Kvothe himself, brilliant and alive with potential. And even when the story gets dark, that spark of wonder never fully goes away. And he meets many friends there. Will and Simon and Fella, these people will be his cornerstones throughout this journey. And they were much needed. We all need good friends, don't we? Now, for all the beauty of the university, what makes Kvothe's time there so powerful is how much of it's about survival. The magic, the lectures, the discovery. And again, they don't even call it magic, they call it sympathy. Every time I say magic, think sympathy. All of that actually matters, but what defines him most is how hard he has to fight just to stay within the very school. Every term, he's desperate to earn enough money to pay tuition. Sometimes he can't, actually. He's forced to scrape by however he can. He does odd things to get this money. He risks everything, constant expulsion. And when all else fails, what he actually does almost every time, he turns to Devi, the Gaelet, this red-haired moneylender from across the river in Imre. She's one of my favorite characters, as I said above, in the whole book. She's sharp, she's intimidating, and she's maybe just a little bit dangerous. But there's also a kind of respect between her and Kvothe, like two predators who recognize the same hunger in each other. Devi's a reminder that knowledge and power don't always come from the university. And sometimes it's a little too much for the university. Rebel spirit, so to speak. Sometimes the smartest people are the ones the system couldn't hold. Music becomes Kvothe's other way of surviving. At night, he crosses the river into the city of Imre and plays at the Eloden, this legendary tavern where only the best musicians are allowed to perform. If you're good enough, you earn the talent pipes, a silver token that marks you as a master musician. The scene where Kvothe plays for his pipes might be one of my favorites in the whole book, and I know I've said I have many favorite scenes over and over again. You're going to hear it over and over again because I like the whole book, so a lot of the scenes I really love. Again, he pours everything into his music, and he pours everything into that performance. His love for his parents, the pain of losing them, his longing for meaning, and when he finishes, the whole room is silent. Not because they're unimpressed, but because they've just witnessed something sacred. It's one of those moments where art becomes magic. And that's really what the Name of the Wind captures so beautifully. That intersection where creativity, emotion, and willpower become indistinguishable. When Kvothe plays, it's not just a talent, it's spellcraft. You can feel it. The audience can feel it. It's not about applause, it's about communion. And when I read it, I get chills and the hair stands up. I get goosebumps. But the beauty of that moment doesn't protect him from the world. He's still broke. He's still at war with Ambrose. He can't go in the archives anymore. Spoiler alert. This whole thing's a spoiler alert. Still balancing on that edge between brilliance and disaster. And when Ambrose takes it too far, when he humiliates him, when he breaks his lute, Kvothe loses control. And again, the clever one calls the name of the wind. He didn't even mean to. What happens when passion, emotion, and anger take hold? It lashes out, breaking Ambrose's arm and leaves Kvothe shaken by the realization that he really does hold that kind of power. It's not a triumphant scene. It's actually frightening because you can feel the cost. Every time Kvothe touches that kind of magic, it takes something out of him. And that's the heart of this book and the price of mastery. The way willpower, obsession, and genius are beautiful, but they're also very dangerous. Through all of this, what I love most is how human Kvothe feels. He's not flawless. He's not a Mary Sue. He's stubborn. He's arrogant, and sometimes he's cruel, but he's also kind and passionate and empathetic and deeply loyal. You can see both the legend and the kid he used to be colliding inside of him, trying to figure out who he's supposed to become. Rothfuss writes all of that with so much empathy. He understands that greatness is built on survival, on all the little humiliations, the debts, and the hard choices we'd rather forget. Kvothe's story reminds you that sometimes the only thing that stands between failure and legend is actually the refusal to quit. Now we shall move on to Master Eloden. When Kvothe finally crosses paths with Master Eloden, the story takes on this strange, it's almost mystical tone. Up until this point, magic in the Name of the Wind has been more logical, measurable, scientific, something you can diagram and test out. But Eloden is the first person who reminds you that real power doesn't live in logic. It lives in mystery. Eloden is actually the master namer at the university, but he's also kind of a madman. He's brilliant, he's unpredictable, and maybe the only person there who truly understands what naming actually is. Everyone else studies magic like it's chemistry. Eloden treats it like it's consciousness itself. Kvothe wants so badly to learn from him, but Eloden doesn't hand out answers like the sage master, like the Zen master he is. He works in parables, kind of like a fool of the madman. His lessons don't look like lessons at all. They actually look like nonsense, pure nonsense. He makes Kvothe chase him through hallways and meditate in storms, stand in silence for hours, or solve riddles that don't actually seem to have any answers. Again, he's like the Zen fool master. It's actually frustrating for the character. I don't feel frustrated. I actually love every second of it. It feels like Eloden's wasting time, but then you start to realize that that's actually the point. Eloden is trying to break Kvothe out of the idea that magic is something that you do. He wants him to understand that it's something that you listen to. And there's this one moment that really captures it all. Eloden takes Kvothe through, I can't remember what it's called. It's kind of like the asylum of the university. And he's talking to him about how, Eloden actually stayed there once upon a time, but they couldn't hold him. Interesting enough. And upon talking to him about these things, he takes him through doorways to the patio of that place or to the outside. And he makes him prove his worth. And so Kvothe does just that. He steps off thinking that Eloden is going to call the name of the wind. And Eloden doesn't. And Kvothe falls and he hurts himself really badly. Stepping off that edge falls to his doom, but he's okay. He's hurt and he survives. And Eloden, what does he do? He just laughs. It's ridiculous, but it's perfect. It's Rothfuss showing that trust, intuition, and surrender are just as vital to understanding the world as intellect. And Eloden's like, you fool, I can't teach you, you're a fool. You can't study the name of the wind the way you study arithmetic. You have to know it. You have to feel it deep down inside. You have to be in a relationship with it. Eloden keeps saying that people who study the deeper names sometimes lose their minds. And the university has a whole wing of people who've done exactly just that. That's where this scene just took place. It's unsettling. And it's exactly what we learn in our own studies of magic, the ancients, occult, and esotericism. That sometimes you take a little too much, and it was just a little too much for your mind and nervous system to handle. As they say, the man drowns where the mystic swims. And again, that's unsettling, but it fits the theme that runs through the whole story. Every kind of wisdom comes with a cost. And yet, through all the madness, you can feel the respect growing between them. Eloden sees in Kvothe something dangerous, but full of potential. Someone who might actually bridge the gap between the rational and the mystical, between the mind and the spirit. It's these chapters that make me fall in love with the book over and over again. Because Rothfuss takes something that could have been standard wizardry, wizard school, fantasy, and turned it into a study of consciousness. Eloden isn't there to teach Kvothe how to cast spells. He's there to teach him how to wake up the sleeping mind. And when you step back, that's the kind of thing, that's actually what the name of the wind is doing for us readers. It's not just telling us a story. It's inviting us to remember what it feels like to know the world again, before we learned to explain it, to wake up the sleeping mind. Now let's move on to another character that's vastly loved in this lore, and her name is Auri. Auri, one of the most haunting, beautiful characters in the entire story. Kvothe meets her by accident. He's exploring the rooftops and the campus one night in the university and discovers these networks of tunnels and hidden rooms beneath the university called the Underthing. And this is like another world down there. It's quiet, it's ancient, it's forgotten. And that's where Auri lives. Auri is this small, fragile young woman who clearly isn't like everyone else. She's delicate, almost ethereal, but not in that cliche way. She feels like someone who's living half in our world and half in something that's symbolic. Like she sees the secret structure of things that other people have forgotten how to notice. She talks about it. The prose is beautiful. She picks things up, she explains them, and she puts them back down. She names everything she owns. Every object, every space, every piece of her hidden world has a name and a personality. And at first it seems odd. It's almost childish. But then you start to realize that it's more than that. That what she's doing is an act of reverence. She's paying attention. She's listening to the soul of things. And that's what the name of the wind is really about. And I keep saying what it's about. I'm trying to explain it to you, but you have to read it. Isn't it? Isn't that what it's about? The art of naming, of knowing something so deeply that becomes sacred. And Auri embodies the sacredness completely. She's not powerful in the way that the masters are. She doesn't wield sympathy or call the wind, but she knows the quiet truth of all things. And that's a kind of magic in and of itself, all in its own. Kvothe's relationship with her, it's tender, it's patient. He never treats her like she's strange. He meets her where she is, bringing her gifts, listening to her stories, respecting her space. It's one of the few relationships in the book that feels entirely selfless. And those scenes with Auri, they slow the story down in the best of all ways. They make you breathe. They remind you of the gentleness that still exists in Kvothe, even after everything he's been through. Beneath all the pride and the ambition and the anger, he's still capable of wonder. Later, Rothfuss would eventually write a whole novella just about her, the slow regard of silent things, and it's one of the strangest, most beautiful pieces of writing ever. It's beautiful. It's Auri. It doesn't follow a plot. It's just a week in the life of her, moving through the underthing, tending to her objects, picking them up, putting them down, the air. But it feels sacred. It's like a prayer. For me, Auri represents something that's at the core of this entire series. The magic, that magic isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just paying attention. Sometimes it's gentle. Sometimes it's seeing the world as alive and naming it not to control it, but to honor it. And that's what makes her so unforgettable. She's not a side character. She's a symbol of the kind of magic that doesn't need power to be real. Now, as we move through this, I must state every myth has a moment where the world cracks open, where the story you thought you were in suddenly connects to something much, 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 much older, deeper, and more mysterious than you could ever have imagined. For Kvothe, that moment happens when he meets Skarpi. Skarpi is the old priest who tells stories the way prophets dream, full of warmth and danger at the same time. Kvothe finds him in the city of Tarbean years after losing everything, and before he goes to the university. Kvothe finds him. He starts listening to his tales that Skarpi tells in secret. They're not the kind of story the church actually approves of. Interesting. They're the kind of story that gets people taken away. Through Skarpi, we hear the true myth behind the Chandrian and the Emir, names that have been hovering around Kvothe like ghosts. He tells of a time before history, of Lanre and Lyra, two heroes who fought to protect their world, and of how Lanre's love and grief twisted him into something very dark. That darkness became Haliax, the first of the Chandrian. And from that tragedy, the Emir rose, an order of divine judges sworn to protect the world from men like him. It's the first time you realize that the stories in the Name of the Wind aren't just bedtime myths. They're fragments of something sacred, something that actually happened. The legends Kvothe grew up hearing around the campfires are echoes of a real history that's been buried, censored, and rewritten. And when Skarpi finishes his story, the consequences come fast. Tale injustice comes for him. He's arrested by the church after telling forbidden stories, arrested for telling forbidden tales. And just like that, Kvothe loses another teacher, another one, gone. Another person who dared to tell the truth. Who are these tale injustices, really? But Skarpi plants a seed that changes everything. Kvothe's obsession with finding the Chandrian grows into something much bigger, a search for the truth behind the Emir, the church, and the very foundation of myth itself. He starts to realize that the only way to understand why his family was killed is to unearth the real stories behind the legends. What I love about this is how Rothfuss uses myth as a mirror. The story of Lanre isn't just backstory. It's a reflection of Kvothe's own life. It's love, loss, and ambition turned into legend. It's what happens when devotion becomes obsession, and it hints at the tragedy that might still be waiting for him by the end of his own tale. Skarpi's chapter is one of these moments that remind you how carefully layered that this world truly is. It's not about fantasy. It's theology. It's history. And it's an oral tradition woven together with mythology, mysticism, and the magic. Rothfuss doesn't just build a world. He builds the way that world remembers itself. And maybe that's why this scene hits so hard, because it's about what stories cost, both for the people who tell them and the people who believe them. And again, through rereading and rereading, these little things actually turn into really big things. And one of these things that makes the Name of the Wind feel so alive is how it's built entirely out of these stories. Folk songs, nursery rhymes, legends told and whispers at taverns. Every character you meet carries a different version of truth, and every one of them feels half-remembered, half-believed. It's myth seen through the cracks of history. We hear about Taborlin the Great, this wandering magician who could call the wind and speak the name of stone. He's the fairy tale version of the very thing that Kvothe is chasing. A man who knows the world by knowing its words. Taborlin escapes prisons, commands the elements, and disappears into story itself. And you can feel Kvothe measuring himself against this very legend even before he realizes that that's what he's doing. It's the myth he's unconsciously trying to step into. And there's Lanre and Lyra. Again, names. The doomed lovers whose fall shattered the world and created the Chandrian. It's a story of love turned to grief and grief turned to corruption. It shows how even the most heroic intentions can curdle when you can't let go. Kvothe hears it from Skarpi, but we've been hearing echoes of it all along, in the songs and the names of people are afraid to say, in the blue fire that marks the presence of the very Chandrian that we're trying to find. And standing in the middle of those myths are the Emir, holy knights, inquisitors, preservers of the faith. Or maybe something else entirely. Kind of sounds like the Knights Templar. Myth, magic, mystery, blasphemy. Depending on who you ask, they're saviors, they're tyrants, they're ghosts. They don't exist at all. They exist in contradiction of themselves, and that's what makes them so fascinating. Every story about them feels like propaganda or half-truths. It's impossible to tell which version is real, and that uncertainty becomes the very fuel for Kvothe's obsession. What Rothfuss does so well is show how all these myths overlap and contradict each other. They're like shards of broken mirrors, each one reflecting a piece of something true, but none of them are complete. And that's how real mythology actually works. Every story you've ever heard has been bent by the person telling it. Memory itself becomes a kind of magic, because remembering is always an act of creation. Side note, it's what God Giordano Bruno, burnt at the stake or at the cross, whatever. For Kvothe, it's more than a curiosity, it's a calling. He's trying to understand where story ends and history begins, where truth turns into song. And the brilliance of the Name of the Wind is that while he's chasing those answers, he's actually becoming another myth that somebody else misremembers someday. That's what I love about this book. It doesn't just build a world, it builds a living mythology, one that feels ancient and unfinished, like it's still being written through him, and maybe through us too. The series is still being written and we hope for it every day. Now, one of the reasons the Name of the Wind never leaves you is because Rothfuss fills it with moments that stay with you long after you've finished and closed the book. These little rituals of meaning that feel less like plot points and more like memories. There's the scene in Traben where Kvothe faces down the Drakis, more towards the end of the book. This massive dragon-like creature that's destroying a village. It's not a traditional dragon fight. It's clever, it's tense, it's full of problem solving. Kvothe doesn't win because he's stronger than everybody else. He wins because he's smarter, because he observes, and because he thinks things through. He uses science and sympathy and instinct to find another way. It's the perfect example of what kind of hero he actually is. Not a warrior, which he is and becomes, but a thinker. An artist. He's a survivor. And then there's the wedding site where Kvothe finds evidence of the Chandrian, the blue fire, the ash, the shard, with their 7 figures. Well, the Drakis becomes the immediate threat, the smell of rot, that awful sense that stories are stepping into reality. Those moments are terrifying, not because they're loud or violent, but because of how quiet they are. Rothfuss makes you feel what it's like to see myth break through the surface of the everyday. Then there's a character, her name is Denna. She's seen with many names, interesting, and she is the lover of the story. She is somebody that Kvothe chases after and pines for over and over again, and yet can never have. There's much that can be said about Denna. That will be for another time. Now, the archives are another symbol that I love. This massive underground library at the university. I would love to be there. I love libraries. I love books. It's part of me. It's part of what I am. It's part of what I do. Now, this massive underground library at the university, it's full of knowledge and locked rooms and forbidden doors. There's one especially mysterious door there. The 4-plated door, also called Valeritas. Truth, maybe? No one knows what's behind it. It's sealed, it's ancient, and it's part of the deeper mysteries connecting the Ymir, the Chandrian, and Kvothe's destiny. It's one of those story details that haunts you because it's unsolved. Like much of this book, it's unsolved, and that's exactly how it's meant to feel. And of course, there's the thrice-locked chest that sits upstairs in Kvothe's room at the Waystone Inn. You see it every time the story cuts back to the present. It's always there. 3 locks, 3 different mechanisms, and no one knows what's inside. Maybe his name. Maybe his magic, maybe his past. The way Rothfuss describes it, you can tell it's not just an object, it's a metaphor. It's everything Kvothe has buried, the part of himself he's locked away so the world can't find him. I also love the little symbols that repeat throughout the book. Wind, silence, music, the number 3, everything feels deliberate, like it's part of some larger spell or ritual. And maybe it is. The silence of 3 parts, the 3 locks, the 3 days of storytelling, the 3 stages of Kvothe's life, the boy, the legend, the innkeeper. It's all connected. And even in the background, Rothfuss fills this world with these subtle reminders that the magic in this story isn't always something you can see. Sometimes it's the glint of a silver pipe, or the hush before a song begins, or the way a name hangs in the air like a prayer. All of these pieces, the Drakis, the Chandrian's blue flames, the forbidden door, the locked chest, the Ymir, they make the Name of the Wind feel alive. They give it texture, mystery, substance. They give it weight. You never are just reading about events. You're watching a legend being built piece by piece through the artifacts it leaves behind. At its heart, the Name of the Wind is a story about power. Not the kind that comes from strength or status, but the kind that comes from understanding. The power that comes from naming. In this world, to know something's true name is to know its essence. It's the oldest magic there is, simple, quiet, and absolute. When Kvothe learns the Name of the Wind, he isn't memorizing an incantation. He's recognizing something ancient that's always been there. waiting to be heard. That's the beauty of Rothfuss' magical system. It isn't about domination. It's about relationship. Naming something isn't an act of control. It's an act of listening. You don't force the wind to move, you ask it, and it answers if it chooses to. That's a subtle but profound shift. It's what separates power from wisdom. And that's the theme that runs through every part of this book. When Kvothe plays his lute, it's another form of naming. Music is invocation. Each note calls something invisible into being. When he speaks the name of the wind, it's no different from when he sings. It's attention made visible. This is a book obsessed with the discipline behind creation. Whether it's sympathy, music, study, or storytelling, everything Kvothe does comes back to the same principle: will, focus, and the courage to see something all the way through. Magic in this world is an art of believing fully. It's faith sharpened into precision. And then there's the deeper thread, in the one Rothfuss never says out loud, but always there beneath the words, the connection between naming and identity. Who are we, really? When the names people give us start to replace who we actually are. Kvothe is living proof of that very question. He's been called so many things: Alir, Arcanist, King Killer, Coat, Kvothe, that you start to wonder if the truth of him still exists somewhere beneath the legend. That's what this book gets so right about myth and memory. Every time we tell a story, whether it's about ourselves or something else, we're naming it, we're shaping what it means, and sometimes we get lost in the story we've created. So when you think about the name of the wind, it's not just about magic. It's about that very human need to understand the world through words and how dangerous that can be. Because the moment you name something, you define it. And in defining it, you limit it. It's such a beautiful paradox, the power to shape the world through language, and the humility to know that no name ever truly captures what a thing is. That's the heartbeat of the story. The cost of brilliance, the cost of understanding, the knowledge that every act of naming, whether it's music, story, elements, or truth, asks something of us in return. Okay, quite a review we have here. When I think about the name of the wind, what stays with me isn't just the world or the magic or even the story itself. It's the silence that frames it all. The silence of a man who's done incredible things, but no longer believes in who he used to be. In the present day, Kvothe isn't the boy from the Ruh anymore. He's not the prodigy who tamed lightning or the musician who could make a room cry. He's Coat now, an innkeeper, anonymous, quiet, and almost hollowed out. And yet, that chest sits upstairs, thrice locked, holding something we can't see. Maybe his name, maybe his magic, maybe that part of himself he has sealed away to survive. That image says everything about what this story is really about. It's about how brilliance and trauma and legend can all live inside the same person, and how sometimes, to keep going, you have to hide the most powerful parts of yourself. What breaks your heart is how Bast, his student, still believes. He's fey, wild, and emotional. He remembers the man Kvothe used to be. He wants his teacher back. He wants the world to remember him too. But Kvothe, he doesn't. He's tired. He's tired of the myths and the legends. He's seen the cost of all of these things, and he knows that every story told about him took him a little further away from the truth. That's what makes the name of the wind so profound. It's not the rise of a hero. It's the aftermath. It's what happens when the story ends and the legend is all that remains. It's about the difference between the person who lives the myth and the one who gets remembered. The silence of three parts, that phrase that opens and closes the book, means something deeper every time I read it. The first silence is the one we all know, the quiet before something begins. The second is the silence of loss, the sound that follows after something sacred has ended. But the third, the one that lingers over this entire story, is the silence of waiting. Waiting for a name to be spoken again, waiting for the wind to return. Kvothe's story is unfinished. We still don't have that third day. We don't have the third book. But maybe that's fitting, because stories like this aren't meant to end neatly. They're meant to echo. And for me, The Name of the Wind isn't just a fantasy novel. It's a myth about becoming, about how we build ourselves through language, through art, through struggle, and through the story. It's about what we lose in that process and how sometimes the silence that follows says more than the legend ever could. Now, Rothfuss didn't just write about magic or fantasy. He wrote about it, attention, like I've said, about the way naming something gives it life, about the way stories give meaning to things we just can't understand in any other way. So when I finished this book, I always come back to that question: what makes a legend feel real? Maybe it's pain, Maybe it's beauty. Maybe it's the silence between them. And again, I've read, reread, and read again this book many times. And every time I finish The Name of the Wind, I end up sitting there in that same quiet that Rothfuss began with, the silence of 3 parts. Because by the time you reach the end, you start to realize that the silence isn't emptiness. It's weight. It's meaning. The silence gives meaning to things. It's the echo that remains after the story stops speaking. What Rothfuss captured in this book isn't just a fantasy world or a clever system of magic. It's something truer. That strange, painful intersection between brilliance meets heartbreak, and art becomes survival. Kvothe's story is the story of every artist, every thinker, every dreamer, every mystic who's tried to shape the world with something invisible, a song, a word, an idea, and had to face the cost of it. It's the realization that the very thing that gives you power, your will, your focus, your ability to name and define can also be the thing that isolates you. Because once the world gives you a name, you can't ever quite go back being nameless again. And maybe that's why this story still lingers after all these years, because underneath all the magic and the mystery, it's about the most human things that there are, trying to understand who you are when the world keeps trying to tell you your story for you. Kvothe spends most of his life chasing names, the name of the wind, the name of the Chandrian, the name of Denna, even his own name. But by the time we meet him as Kvothe, we start to see that the great magic isn't in knowing every secret of the world. It's in learning to live with the ones that can't be spoken. That's the alchemy of The Name of the Wind. It takes myth and makes it feel personal. It turns the act of storytelling into the act of magic. It shows that every word, every song, every silence is a part of a greater pattern. One that reminds us that the stories we tell are, in their own way, alive. And maybe that's the real reason this book matters so much to me, because it reminds us that storytelling is how we remember ourselves, that every legend begins with a name whispered into the darkness, and that every silence that follows still belongs to that same song. If you've made it this far, thank you so very much. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for feeling, thank you for believing that stories matter. If you want to keep exploring the hidden symbols, the mythic echoes, and the deeper meaning woven through the stories that we love, make sure, again, as always, to subscribe, to like, and to share this with others. It helps more than you could ever imagine as we grow, and it keeps this small corner of the internet alive for people who still care about stories with soul. This is Magus in the Media, where we explore myth, magic, and meaning in the stories that we love. And until next time, listen for the wind.